Coal will remain a fundamental and powerful part of the energy mix of the country, so says the inaugural chairperson of the newly launched South African chapter of the Future Coal Organization, the world's only coal multi-lateral and neutral representative organization. Many have called for the use of fossil fuels, such as coal, to come to an end. But for a developing nation like South Africa, this could mean abandoning a lucrative and profitable resource. And to discuss this a bit more further, we're now joined by energy expert Professor Hartmut Winkler. He joins us now via our video link. Professor, thank you so much for your time this evening here on SABC News. Now, not so long ago, at the height of load shedding, we were told that we should do away with coal. And it seems as if now we are being told, to embrace, different energy alternatives. It seems as if coal is here to stay.
Well, that comes from the coal industry. Of course, they have to promote themselves. It's for them, it's a case of survival. The question is for how long. And sure, in this country at the moment, more than 80% of our electricity comes from coal. And while there is talk of shutting down some coal plants, that's not going to happen in a massive hurry. At least not until there's some alternatives, because otherwise we simply are going to go back into load shedding. So in the medium term, for the next 10 years or so, there's still going to be a demand for coal. The question is what happens after that. And that largely doesn't depend so much on what's happening in South Africa, but that largely depends on what's going to happen in China and India, because those are the two countries where at the moment they're building a lot of new coal plants. And if that continues, then there's going to continue to be a demand for coal. If not, then coal is likely to eventually, the whole sector will probably eventually shut down, simply because of the link between coal emissions from coal burning and climate change.
And, from the work that you've been doing, what is your take? Should coal stay?
Once there are alternatives, I don't think there's going to be a role for coal anymore, because also there is the economic argument as well. Coal is cheaper than nuclear energy, but it's now becoming more expensive than solar and wind. So I don't see new coal plants being built in most countries, certainly not in Europe, and probably not in this country as well. As I mentioned, in India and especially China, they are still actively building. But for how long? Because sooner or later, those countries too are going to have enough electricity supply. And the trend globally is towards solar and wind. And I should say that as much as China has been building most of the coal plants, they've been building even more solar and wind farms. So in that sense, it's a bit unclear at the moment for how much longer coal is going to go on. Certainly, demand for electricity in the world is still growing. As far as coal, the projection is that the demand is going to grow until about 2030, and after that, it's going to gradually go down. So it'd be wiser to invest more in solar and wind at this stage, and who knows what other new technologies are on the horizon which aren't feasible yet, but probably will be sometime in the future, like say tidal power and so on. But I think in the long term, the coal sector needs to look at diversification. And a lot of companies in South Africa have already started doing that. Seriti Coal, for example, which is one of the larger ones here, is building a wind farm in Mpumalanga, quite a big one. It's going to be one of the biggest in the country. So they are looking at alternatives. So just to I don't think they'll be able just to, focus on coal forever.
Yeah, and I mean, the country is really looking at different ways and means of getting energy supplied in the country. But at the same time, how long do you anticipate that South Africa will be using coal for?
Well, given that Kusile hasn't even finished completely yet, and that Medupi is still quite new, those plants were built with the idea that they would last for 40 years or so. So I think certainly for those two coal plants, I suspect those are going to still be running for for at least 30 years or so.
Yeah.
But some of the older ones that have been causing problems and have been where the breakdowns have been essentially responsible for load shedding, and that maintaining those is going to become ever more expensive, because just like any old piece of machinery, whether it's a car or anything else, the older it gets, the more breakdowns it has, the less reliable it becomes. So it's just going to become more and more expensive to keep some of the older plants going in the country. At the moment, there's no real alternatives until some new generating capacity is put online, and that's going to take a while still. So in the short term, I think the coal plants are going to continue running as they have been. But from 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I think I see a lot of the plants which are currently the backbone of the South African electricity generating space are probably going to be closing down one after the other.
And, when you look at some of the reports coming out, I mean, some organizations, still believe that coal is lucrative, for developing nations like ours. What is your take? Do you think that it's still lucrative and profitable, especially at a time where the world is moving away from fossil fuels?
Where it's lucrative is in terms of exports. In fact, a lot of these coal mining companies prefer exporting their coal rather than selling it to Eskom, because they ultimately get more money for it. So I think that branch, so I think we're going to see more and more of the coal mined here actually being exported. There have been logistical problems with the rail line going down to Richards Bay and so on, but that can be addressed. And certainly, while China seems to be very interested in importing coal, and India, I think that's where the coal sector is going to be moving to. It's going to become increasingly, I think, an export sector. Sure, they'll still be supplying Eskom coal plants for a while, but I think that's where they're going to be looking at for the profits, for the money.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for your time. Indeed, a conversation that is certainly going to stick around with us for quite some time.